you had to give me a sentence, what is the sentence theme?
Once I told him about his, respectfully and in an email, about his lack of leadership and the fact that he wanted to do things with grants that were impossible. And I kept telling him, like, we can't do that, and questioning stuff. He would take me off projects, tell people I wasn't doing what I was supposed to because I questioned him. Because I understood, I helped write that grant. I knew what was in that grant. He told everybody in front of Crystal, Deontay, everybody, we're going to get MacBooks, we're going to do that, we're going to get swag, we're going to use it for travel. I said, you cannot do that. It's a very, very specific grant. Took me off. I questioned Junior DA. There's kids in there from out of the county, all this. Took me off Junior DA. I did not want to do it. He made it look as if I wasn't doing what I needed to do because I questioned him. Because I knew for a fact Mr. Cuffey respectfully did not know what he was doing. Period.
A few years later.
That's right. That is what she testified here to senators at the state capitol today. That whistleblower's name is Amanda Timpson, and she was in charge of that gang prevention program. She wrote the grant that she is alleging was misused on things like laptops, travel, and swag for the DA's office. She had actually been an employee of the DA's office before Fani Willis even took over as district attorney. And she said when she flagged what she said was an illegal use of that grant money, she was reprimanded, demoted, and eventually fired. The investigation by state senators here isn't even the only probe into Willis's alleged misuse of those federal grant funds. The House Judiciary Committee in Washington, D.C. is also looking into those allegations and has sent Willis several letters seeking documents that have gone unanswered. Timpson said this was less about her firing and more about transparency.
I'm speaking up for more than just me, a little bit vindicating, and also to me it helps people kind of like dig into what's really going on in spaces of elected officials and corruption and potential corruption.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I gotta tell you guys, I'm not entirely sure how Fani Pack Willis, the woke DA of Fulton County, will boohoo, whine, and cry racism about this one, okay? Because she's been exposed by a black woman who came out as a whistleblower and exposed Fani Willis, firing her in retaliation for her exposing the corruption and the misuse of taxpayer dollars that is allegedly happening by Fulton County's DA office led by Fani Willis. Now, again, you guys should remember this story. There was a whistleblower by the name of Miss Amanda Timpson who exposed Fani Willis with audio evidence and proof, okay, that she fired her in retaliation for her going to Fani Willis and letting her know that, hey, you guys are misusing taxpayer funds and this is not the right thing, okay? This is not what we're supposed to be doing with our federal tax dollars and what they were supposed to be doing. $500,000 of which were supposed to go towards gang violence prevention among the youth, okay? And then you had another $2 million or so that was supposed to go towards SA kits, okay, to help women that have went through that situation. However, that's apparently not what the money was used for. And again, there's some bombshell allegations and revelations here from this hearing that happened where this whistleblower testified exactly what was the money being used for that led to her firing when she exposed this to Fani Willis. And now we're getting a story that kind of explains why Fani Willis fired this woman and why she did not want this woman telling the truth about what these funds are being used for. Because apparently, according to this whistleblower, some of these funds, specifically the funds that were used or supposed to be used for gang violence and prevention, they were being used to basically have a camp for privileged kids that were out of state, including some kids who were Fani Willis's family members, or at least she referred to them as her family members. Take a look.
And my first red flag was on our first day with the youth. Everybody went around and said what school they attended and where they're from. And there were many students who were outside of the state, outside of the county. It was essentially a summer program for the most privileged youth in around the country. There were elected officials, grandkids there. Fani's niece, or what she represented as her niece from Florida, attended. We went and picked up the niece every morning from her office.
From Fani's office?
Yes, from Miss Willis's office. Because she is a minor, I don't want to say her name. However, the documents are in the binder that I gave you. Another young lady that I worked with directly, she was from Wisconsin. She's currently still a resident of Wisconsin, attends Wisconsin schools. We were able to locate her mother's social media page that shows that they are still residents of that. Somebody who I won't necessarily say right now, but just won a DeKalb County state judgeship. Her kids attended the program as well. This was not a crime prevention program for at-risk youth in Fulton County. This was elected officials, kids, grandkids, cousins, nieces, nephews. And this was during the time when so many people in Fulton County were hollering about the dismay about the water boys. But what were we doing when we were given this money for these youth, but watching them on the news? And you know, that summer specifically, I just remember so many youth passing away due to gun violence. And I'm not saying that we could have changed or rewrote history, but I do always wonder how our programs, if used correctly, could have affected the youth in Fulton County for sure.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Absolute bombshell. Absolute bombshell. Fani Willis was using federal taxpayer dollars that was supposed to be used to prevent violence, okay, among gang members in Fulton County. She used it allegedly to set up a summer camp for the privileged kids of politicians, aka her friends that she knows, and for her own family members, okay, her niece, allegedly, okay, whoever she called her niece, right? But again, these kids came from out of state. They weren't even residents of Georgia or Fulton County. So she used taxpayer dollars that was supposed to go to benefit residents of Fulton County, but they actually benefited everybody else. Again, is anybody surprised by this? Considering how this is the same woman that was accused of using taxpayer dollars to get her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, paid by hiring him to help prosecute her political opponent, even though this guy was not qualified to actually be on that case. She overpaid him considering his qualifications while she was getting chauffeured around the country on taxpayer dime via Nathan Wade, right? Again, nobody should be surprised by this. This woman is corrupt to the core. But yet, the voters of Fulton County decided to, at least in the Democrat primary, to, hey, have her move forward as their general election nominee. She's probably going to be reelected as Fulton County DA, despite the fact that there's so many allegations of misuse of taxpayer funds. She's not working on behalf of them. She's not. She's working on behalf of herself. She's enriching herself and her family members and her boyfriend. So I'm not surprised by this at all. But again, Jim Jordan's a racist, right? He's a racist for investigating and trying to figure out what is going on. Why are you misusing taxpayer funds? It's amazing how that works. So without further ado, I actually want to react to some of the testimony here from this whistleblower, because she's going to go into more detail about her firing and kind of how she went about confronting Fani Willis about these allegations and what happened with this situation. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yes, in early March of 2021, after a lot of the administrative work was done on the grant, we need to now get to work. And so Michael Cuffey, who is the new chief programs officer, invited myself and my colleague, who also co-wrote the grant, into a meeting just so he could understand the scope of the grant. In this meeting, this was the first time that he kind of mentioned that what he wanted to spend the grant on, and he articulated that he wanted to spend the grant on computers, travel, and swag. And at the time we were saying swag because there was a lot of rebranding going on, and so like each unit now had their own sweaters and their own mugs and stuff, and there was a complete and total rehaul of the building and stuff. So this idea of having swag was like a big thing. So those are the three things.
Trinkets. These are pens and coffee cups and T-shirts and sweatshirts, things promoting the new district attorney?
Correct. And so I quickly kind of interjected and let him know that those were not things that we could do with the grant. At that point, it seemed as if he hadn't read the grant narrative, and so I just wanted to educate him. I was a bit concerned, but at that point, it was the first time I had heard of it. I just tried to kind of set him straight and tell him like, oh, we can't do that. It's really specific, and it's specific to programming. We can't buy any equipment, and that was a huge thing because in the grant narrative, in the grant budget, it says specifically no equipment, and so his idea for wanting to get computers and even pay for travel, like those are completely out of the scope of the grant.
Wow. So again, what she wanted to do with the money, and again, it all makes sense now, right? So again, instead of spending it on gang violence and prevention, okay, which is what the federal tax dollars are supposed to be used for, no, she wanted to run a fancy summer camp for privileged kids, while at the same time promoting her office with swag, okay, so that she can look good and to make her brand, I guess, stand out. They were more focused on branding and trying to promote Fani Willis's image rather than to actually solve problems and to use the money for what it's supposed to be used for. Interesting.
And you know that because you wrote the grant?
Correct.
And in the grant plan, you tell how the money is going to be spent?
Correct.
And in the budget, you identify how it's intended to be spent?
Correct.
Did any of those documents provide for spending money on swag?
No.
Did any of those documents provide for spending money on computers or other equipment?
No, sir.
Did any of those documents or budgets provide for money to be spent for travel?
No.
Okay. And how about on the junior DA grant? I think we called that the JAG grant. Were you continuing to administer that in March of 2021?
Yes.
Okay. And did you notice or detect or hear about any intentions to improperly spend that money?
Not in March, but as time went on, yes.
So what happened when you straightened Michael Cuffey out and after he had told you his intentions of how he intended to spend the money, you told him that was illegal? What was his reaction?
Initially, he let me know that it was the employees in the DA's office call Miss Willis Madam. So he let me know that it was Madam's vision. And I basically said, okay, I understand that, but that's not what the grant says.
Wow.
And as the director of the grant, I wanted to make sure that I was careful and clear what the grant said. And this grant was written prior to her coming in the office. I assumed at the time that maybe they just weren't aware, but I just wanted to make him aware that that is not what the grant says.
Okay.
They had to call this woman Madam. Fani Willis is a psychopath. 100% a narcissist, right? Madam Willis, Madam Fani, right? Madam Fani Pack. Amazing. Amazing.
Did you hear further conversations about the misuse of the money, or did he follow your advice and not spend it on swag and travel and equipment?
So initially, that was just the initial time. I continued to be persistent and to let him and everybody else know that we could not spend the grant in that manner. And he persisted to say that that was what we were going to do with the grant. In weekly meetings, we had weekly program team meetings. He would say that, so it was multiple people that heard his intentions to spend this money that way. And I was just persistent in letting him know that that was not what we could do. And I noticed as I persisted to let him know that my treatment drastically started to change. Yes, specifically from Michael Cuffey, in the form of being disinvited to meetings or being blatantly rude, or when I said, hey, we can't do that, just staring directly into my eyes and then just walking off. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't know, if this was an intimidation factor or what was going on, but I just knew I had to stand my ground because I was, fearful of the misuse of funds.
Okay.
Yeah, so you see now, you heard that. Okay, we're going to fast forward here to the part where she goes into more detail about retaliation, the alleged retaliation, and Fani Willis's response to her complaints.
And I said, I need to speak with Miss Willis because I don't believe she knows. That was, I believe, at 11 o'clock in the morning. And then about 5, he responded back to the PDP by saying, wow, period. This is a problem, period. Then text me saying, you have a meeting with the DA at 3 p.m.
This is in July of 21 sometime.
Yes, this is July 26th of 2021.
Right.
And so immediately, I felt like a weight was lifted. Finally, I'll get to let her know because I felt like I was trying to, in part, protect her, protect the youth of Fulton County, and just protect the integrity of these grants. And so ultimately, at 3 p.m., I went to Miss Willis's office. Judging by Dexter was in this meeting, I could tell that she was already kind of briefed. And I went to, she said something to the effect of, now what's going on? So I went to speak and tell her, I said, I'm concerned about the way the grants, and I think I said something else, and she cut me right off in the middle of my sentence and said, effective immediately, you're going to be moved, and demoted me to the role of file clerk. So immediately,
You went from a department head to a file clerk.
Correct, a program head. So I went from the director of juvenile diversion to a file clerk, which changed not only the function of my job, it changed my schedule, it changed my location, it changed, this is frivolous, but I was taken off the website. I was essentially banished for what I saw to be protecting her at the time.
Did she say why you were being demoted?
No, not at that time. The meeting lasted maybe 2 to 5 minutes because she cut me off immediately and told me I was demoted. So I was kind of left flabbergasted, and I reached back to her that evening via email just to get some clarity, and that was the first time I ever heard that she was saying that she wasn't pleased with my work.
Yeah, so essentially this woman goes on to continue to complain despite being demoted, okay? And eventually she ends up getting fired, right? She gets a knock on her door one day and she's told that, hey, you're out of here, you're done, okay? You can't work here anymore. And that's basically the end of that story, okay? Up until this point where she comes out and exposes Fani Willis and her corruption. And it must be noted that, Fani Willis, who claims she's fighting on behalf of black people and black women, it seems that she's a pain in the ass. She's a nightmare for black women, this black woman, and also the wife of Nathan Wade, who is a black woman, right? It's amazing how that works. See, this is why I try to tell you guys all the time about, black folks boohoo whining and crying racism in the workforce in corporate America. And it's like, no. If you've ever actually been in corporate America, you should know as a black person, the people that's holding you back is not the white man, right? It's actually other black folks, okay? Because jealousy and hate is very real, okay? And, some people have a crabs in a bucket type mentality, and I think that shows up quite a bit. But in this woman's case, again, she thought she was protecting Fani Willis by going to her with these allegations of misuse of taxpayer funds, but Fani Willis was in on it, right? She was in on it because her family members were benefiting, okay, allegedly. And, also it's stories like this that really kind of remind me of just how inefficient our government is, because we're spending all this money. We're talking about $500,000 here that's supposed to go towards gang violence and prevention. The feds are probably not asking for any type of, audit in regards to, okay, were the funds actually used for what it's supposed to be used for, or any type of report about if it's effective, okay? And I can only imagine that this is just one of many programs in this country where you have all this federal taxpayer dollars being funneled into these programs where there's no oversight and it never gets used for what it's supposed to get used for. And you wonder why our deficit and debt is so out of control. It's because we just spend money on nonsense. Our government is just extremely inefficient. right? They don't know what they're spending the money on, right? They just say, hey, we're going to spend money. It's going to be earmarked for this. And hey, if you spend it on that, you spend it on it. But if you don't, hey, we don't really have any real oversight. We don't really care if it's actually effective. How many lives did it save? We don't know, right? But we spent $500,000 on it. So, I guess people are asking, well, what happens next? Well, they can't really do anything in terms of this commission, but they can add, new laws and stuff in the future for oversight. However, I guess it is important to get this out here to the public because she still is up for re-election. I don't think the voters of Fulton County will care, okay, to be quite honest with you. That's the sad part about it. But hey, I mean, it just adds to more of the allegations of corruption against Fani Willis and, more reasons for why the GOP, at least at the federal level, should push harder to investigate and to, have her potentially brought up on charges, right? Because to me, it seems like this is pretty compelling, okay, in regards to what happened here. I mean, again, not only did she misuse taxpayer funds, but she retaliated against a woman who tried to warn her about it, again, because she was in on it. So, hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.